All right, folks. Christian Brim here with Core Group, getting started with the PPP forgiveness. Everybody loves some PPP. I have with us the one and only Jennifer Hers, the only person I know that has proven the AICPA wrong on an Excel file. So we will open by turning it over to her. Jennifer. Good morning.
Hello. Morning. Yeah, afternoon. It's 12:01 now. All right. I will share my screen in just a second. Sorry. I was downloading one more thing for today.
No problem.
And of course, it wants to. Okay, good. We've got it. Let me go open it. Okay. All right.
While she's getting that started, we are recording, so don't put anything in the chat bot that you don't want shared with the interwebs. Please give me your question and answer in the Q&A box anytime. We'll answer them. If not immediately, then sooner. So, Jennifer.
All right. We're going to talk about PPP loan forgiveness. And the forms. So they have published 3 forms to choose from. We have Form 3508S, Form 3508EZ, and then just plain Form 3508. Form 3508S, this is for PPP loans under $50,000. You have no reduction in wages and no reductions in employees.
So is this the automatic forgiveness that they were talking about?
Sort of, yes. You still have to provide documentation. So it's a 1-page thing that you have to go through. You fill out your name, all of that, your number, all that information, and how many employees you had, and if you had any EIDL advance. Then you have to answer your questions to make sure, and then you still have to provide information to them. They still want, if you have payroll, they want the payroll information, or if you're a sole proprietor, they want your bank account information showing that you paid yourself or rent or anything like that.
So when you say payroll information, what does that look like?
Payroll information looks like 5940. This is a form from our software. Other payroll softwares might have it, but I linked out the name and the identifier, but it'll have per employee how much was paid in that time frame in your 24 weeks.
Okay.
And that is what they want. And then they want the 941s for that time period as well.
Okay. Now, is that uniform across all banks, or is that, can the bank ask for something different than the SBA?
They can always ask for something more, but from the instructions and the banks that I've dealt with, I've talked to about 5, they want all the same thing, which is what is on this instruction sheet.
Okay.
On page right here. So it goes through all the different things that they want. So this one is nice. No, you're fine. This one's always the easier one. It's under 50,000, 1 page.
So to recap, it's if you haven't reduced your wages or the number of full-time equivalents.
Correct. And yes.
Okay.
Now, does that mean you have to have the same exact employees that you had, but the same number? That's one of the big questions we get.
Got it.
All right, Form 3508EZ. If your PPP loan is at least 50,000, so 50,000 or more, no reductions in wages over 25%, and no reductions in employees over 25%.
Okay, I have a dumb question.
Okay.
Does the 25% apply to the 3508S?
That is, it's not strictly in the information. I would assume so, but I have not been able to clarify that yet.
So theoretically, you could have a loan that was less than 50,000
Mhm.
that you had reductions, but not more than 25%. What form should I do?
I would check with the bank, but I would go with the easy form.
Okay.
You'll see it's just a little bit more information. So it has still the same information up here. They just want to know what your pay schedule is, what your covered period.
Talk about that for a second. Still have the option of the 24-week period, correct?
Yes, the 24 weeks, the covered period, yes, is from the date of it being funded and 24 weeks later.
But you could use the shorter if you wanted. I
If you
mean,
wanted to use 8 weeks, you could. Also remember, if you pay weekly or biweekly, you have the choice of doing an alternative payroll covered period. So if your loan came on the 15th, but you don't pay until the 20th, then you can say, hey, I want to start my covered period the 20th.
but just if you're weekly or biweekly.
Only if you're weekly or biweekly.
Got it.
And again, this looks very familiar, what we've dealt with before on the first revision or first preliminary forms that we were given. It asks for your payroll costs. All you need to do, remember on this form, all you need to do is get to your loan amount. Don't list everything, because everything you put here, you have to supply information for.
So what you're saying is if you have enough payroll to cover the loan amount,
Don't
then
worry about
don't-
line 2, 3, or 4.
got it.
And only put your payroll costs up here for what you need. I have the example here of one that we did. The loan amount was $145. They're 24 weeks. Their payroll costs were $349 per the form that we had. So we just used that form. Included in payroll costs could be your state taxes, but if you include state taxes, you have to get the state forms, the withholding forms, any other state forms that you have showing the tax paid. And then if you, healthcare coverage, that could be included in payroll, but you have to show them the invoices from that. So if you can just give it to them where you just have this payroll sheet and your 941s, it cuts down on so much paperwork for you.
And to clarify, you're talking about, when you're talking about state taxes, you're talking about the unemployment tax.
Correct, yes.
Got it.
So there's a lot that you can include in there in this line 1, but only get it to where, just go as far as you need to. For example, in this, we only needed to get to 145. Our report said 349, so we just went with 349. This company also include, we could have grabbed 401k, we could have grabbed the healthcare, anything like that, but we decided not to. There's no use in adding more work to us.
Makes sense.
So that is that form.
Now, what was that 60%? Can you go back a slide? Or yeah, okay. So what is that 60%?
They've now said instead of it needing to be, I can't remember what it was, 80%? Was that what, I don't remember anymore. Your payroll costs have to be at least 60% of your loan amount. So you can't, yeah. So if you,
Okay. So if we don't have line 2, 3, or 4, we have to complete it, but it doesn't come into play.
yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Which if you don't have line 1, how did you get your PPP loan? So.
Point. Well, you fired everybody. You took the money and fired everybody.
Which then you have to go over here to this form. which is we'll go back. The plain old Form 3508. It's the longest form. It requires the most detail. And if you had any changes in number of employees or wages over 25%, you have to use this form. And there's an Excel file available to assist from the AICPA that actually does work.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just going to leave that one right there. I'm sure you've checked it. I know you checked it.
So this one, I mean, it's a 5-page. You have to show how many, all your compensation, all of that stuff.
Now the spreadsheet does those calculations for you, the schedules there? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Another question we get, well, somebody quit and I can't rehire them. They just refuse to come back, anything like that. You can still use the EZ form because it takes out anything like that. You're giving 25% for reducing, but if you just can't, you had to fire them for a reason or they quit, it gives you leeway on that as well.
Okay, so let me rephrase that and make sure I got that right. If you had to fire somebody for cause, that doesn't count into the 25%.
Correct.
Even if I didn't replace them.
Correct. You just have to, if questioned, you have to show that you did have cause to fire them or if they did quit, that you did try to rehire somebody.
Okay. I have a question while we're paused. What if your number of employees went up over 25%? Do you have to use the long form?
No, this is just reduction.
Okay.
Which I'll change the slide. Any reduction to number of employees or wages over 25%.
Ryan caught you on that one.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Can you go back to the form? I want to point out something from personal experience. So the EIDL advance amount. We ran into this where our lender said that the SBA said that we had received an EIDL grant of $10,000 and therefore they were not forgiving that amount. But our problem is we took the EIDL loan, therefore we shouldn't have had a grant.
Correct.
So be careful on that. You may have to go back to the SBA and straighten it out with them. But again, you only have an EIDL advance amount if you didn't end up taking the loan, the EIDL loan. The banks, the SBA has said that the banks are responsible for collecting that. So if you did do an EIDL advance and didn't get the loan, the SBA is going to forgive all but $10,000 of that to the lender, and then you're going to have to turn around and write a check to the bank for the $10,000.
Or $1,000 per employee, which is what they changed it to.
That's all. I just wanted to point that out from personal experience.
Which we just found out this week. So.
Yeah, I mean, so what have you seen as far as timeframes getting answers back from the SBA?
Oh, it's fast, a lot faster than I thought it would be.
How long on average?
I think it was 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, from the time you gave it to the bank.
Yep. And I know the banks are pushing, the ones that I've been working with, they're sending us, do you have these clients or what clients do we share so we can try and get this done before the end of the year. So they want to get it done.
What happens from a tax standpoint if your loan is forgiven?
If your loan is forgiven, then while it is not taxable income, the expenses up into that forgiveness amount is not deductible.
So essentially it's taxable.
So essentially, yes. So in this example here, 145 depending on the EIDL amount, but we'll just go with this, say this full 145 was forgiven, the 145 worth of payroll expenses cannot be expensed on your tax return.
So in other words, that $349,000 that I had for payroll expense, I've got to deduct $145,000 from that expense item.
Yep, so now you have $200,000 in expense and your taxable net income goes up.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm curious your experience, but I would say that this is something that most businesses haven't been planning for in their taxes, because they probably haven't been including it as income yet. But that's going to be, in this case, $145,000 worth of income that shows up in November or December, and that's going to essentially be taxable.
Correct.
Could it be, and this is a hypothetical, could it make sense to delay your forgiveness until, say, closer to the end of the year so that the SBA doesn't forgive it until next year?
It's always possible. That would be something I would talk with your accountant and run the numbers, and it's going to be included, but you'll have more time to maybe counteract that tax.
Okay. So John has a question. What banks have you been working with?
I've been in touch with Great Plains, First Bank, First Security. I have to get the other two. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think it's First State Bank of Eric is the one that.
Okay. What else do you got for us?
That was.
All right, we're to the Q&A.
Yeah, the forms aren't as difficult as what they were trying to make them back when they did the PPP loan.
So this is a question for our clients. Have we been preparing these forms for them, or what's that look like?
It's up to them if they need support. We have been, or some just want us to send them the this.
Got it. So the supporting documentation. Right. And usually there's some method with the bank to give it to them. I know ours was an actual, well, I don't know about ours. I was working on one for a client that was a portal where you uploaded it. It's to the bank, not to the SBA. There's not anything where you directly.
No, it all goes to the bank.
It's all through, right. David is mentioning that there are some challenges, the AICPA in Congress maybe making the changing the taxability of it.
There's always that possibility.
Okay, but that hasn't happened yet.
No.
Okay. And I'm quite sure, I'm just guessing that nothing politically is going to happen in the next few weeks. That'd be my guess. So I've got a couple other questions. Terry wants to know, how many weeks was the PPP loan intended to be used within? I know it changed at some point.
It was originally 8 weeks.
And now you can do it 8 weeks or 24 weeks. Okay. Chris has a question. What is the best process to complete this as a sole owner employee? When is the actual due date to submit this form? Said he hasn't received anything from his bank.
Yeah, interesting. The banks have really been on top of it, but
well, this bank, I'm not going to say what bank, but it is a big national bank.
Okay. If you do not have any employees, it's under 50,000. It's this 3508S. And I contacted a couple of them that I know I have the smaller clients on, and they said bank statements, this form with the bank statements for the time period.
From the business.
From the business for the time period, yes.
And what, I mean, I was kind of confused on that because basically for a self-employed person, Schedule C, it was automatic because the amount that you got
Is, yep.
So the bank statements, are they really showing anything, or is it just proof
The
that you're
only
in
thing-
business? Or
I think it's proof that you're in business, and that because you can either show transfers to yourself or checks to yourself. And that's your wage.
Interesting. All right. Stephen has a question. Just to confirm, the PPP loan will show up as income and the expenses will not be deductible. Is that right?
It will not show up as income.
I was going to say he was wrong.
Right.
It's not income, but the expenses are not deductible.
Right. So essentially it is, but you will not see it on your income line. You will just see it as a reduction in your expenses.
Yeah. Don't want to double dip there, Stephen.
Right. Yeah. That.
All right. Michelle says, I have not been contacted by the bank that did my PPP as yet. Should I contact them?
You can always contact them, or we can, the forms are available.
So you're saying go ahead and complete the forms, put the information together and send it to them.
Yep.
Okay. Angela wants to know, is there a deadline to submit the application for forgiveness?
Not that I have heard. It would just be, I would get it in before you have to make payment on it.
Right. So that's a 6-month window from disbursement.
Correct. It's a year, isn't it?
Oh, is it a year? You're thinking of the EIDL as a year.
I'm thinking the EIDL. Yep. So
Yeah.
6 months. So I'd get it in so that they can be working on it, so you know before you have to make a payment to it.
Okay.
And I believe you check with your bank, but if you have this application in, I don't think they're going to request payment until they have a decision on the forgiveness
So
part of it.
Kelvin says that it's 1 year.
That's what I thought.
Maybe they changed it and I'm not the expert, so I'm going to defer to you.
I really thought that you had a year before you started paying it.
Okay. We'll go with her answer because that's what she does. John has a question. When does interest start?
Interest should have started day one. Then they disperse the money, similar to the EIDL.
But it's not due if it's forgiven.
Correct.
But if you wait a year, the interest will be accrued back to the beginning.
From my understanding, yes.
Okay. Great questions.
Mhm.
Who else has questions that I can screw up? All right. So this webinar will be recorded and will be on our website for sharing with those folks that weren't able to attend. Feel free to pass it on. I will conclude since there's no more questions. Jennifer, thank you very much. And as always, we like to wave until the camera is off. Bye-bye, everybody.
I